again, everyone. RFK Refugees Podcast. Ted only here for this Tuesday edition. Well, you're listening to this on Tuesday. If you're a Patreon, you got this on Monday. So congratulations. You can join our Patreon, patreon.com/RFK Refugees. Please join up. But John is not here. John is currently, we'll say, finding a potential location for Mohamed Yaz to go off and be happy and stop eating up all the cap space that he is for making one appearance. Yeah, we'll go with that. But yes, this is going to be a weird show. This is going to be an odd show because it'll just be me. John, as stated, is not here, so just me. You just have me. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. Let's talk DC United. We'll start there. DC United, of course, having an interesting week, to say the least. I feel like the past three games have been sort of a perfect encapsulation of what DC United is as a team in 2024. They are a team that is, has generally a very good idea of how they want to play. They're going to play through Benteke. They're going to press. They're going to establish that. And they're going to come into games and they're going to be prepared, and they're going to give teams fights that may not be expecting it. And they also are going to dominate teams that are not good, as we saw against Atlanta. And then they're going to have games against teams that are good, particularly on short rest against the Red Bulls, where they don't look so good. And then they're going to have a game, maybe they get a bounce back and they, play up to the level of a team like Miami, but they just don't have the skill set and they fall asleep once, and they make a mistake and they give up a goal. So let's start a little bit. I'm going to talk a little bit. I'm talking mostly about Miami today, but I think it's worth going back just a little bit to that New York game. Obviously, we're coming off the high of the Atlanta game and just how dominant that team looked. We talked about it on the show. And then they come up against New York, and they really didn't just look – it looked sloppy. The field certainly wasn't the greatest out there. I don't know if you can blame it necessarily. I talked about a lot in my pre-match, which you read if you are a Patreon subscriber. So again, subscribe to get those little hints. And I talked about how this was a team that was probably more prepared for Benteke than a lot of other teams out there. They have two very tall center backs, Sean Nealis, who actually didn't play. They actually played Reyes instead. Reyes, again, still very tall. I think he's still in like the 90th percentile. And his goal was simply to frustrate Benteke and get in Benteke's head. And I think he was mostly successful in this game, unfortunately for DC. He came in and really just made it hard for him. There was a moment in the game, of course, where I think Benteke kind of lost it a little bit on him. I don't know what was said or who was said to what, but they really did an effective job of sort of, muting and not really giving Benteke much. He still probably was pretty dominant in the air. I haven't gone and looked back at his stats. I'm sure he won still a pretty good size of head balls, but they also sort of prevented him from really being in threatening positions inside the box as well. And I think that's sort of been another avenue of this team. Is, not only is, yes, it's Benteke winning the ball, maybe in the midfield or maybe, further back. And then they are able to sort of keep that possession, keep that pressure to where then they can find him, in the 6-yard box as well. So it's kind of a two-pronged approach with Benteke. It's not simply just, there's a method to the madness, so to speak, even though it does seem like, you're just playing across to Benteke. But DC really weren't effective. And another way I think New York were extremely effective, especially in the first half, was they really forced DC down the left side. They forced the ball to Dahome, and I think it was, I'm pretty sure it was like Ted Kudu-Pietro sort of kind of on that left side. And Ted's pretty good, but, I think the combination you have on the right side with a Jared Stroud and a Aaron Herrera really makes a difference. And New York really just kind of isolated that and sort of forced Christian Dahome to really be the guy out there on the left. And he was most certainly not the guy. And I think we saw a lot of the limitations. I think we saw why he, was maybe on the bench. And we saw Pedro Santos get the start. Really kind of a rough game from him. Sloppy overall from the team, but there were particular moments where he got the ball sort of in space and couldn't possess it. It would go out of bounds. Just not a really good performance. And then, But DC, to their credit, I think in the first half, still kind of, despite the sloppiness, I thought they still had slightly better of the play. And then, there's a wonder goal. I'm not sure you can really, point too much at Alex Bono there. He is off his line. It's a 0.01% XG shot, sort of right at the end of the first half. It's one of those moments. And, I think on X or Twitter, I'm going to call it Twitter. I'm not going to call it X. On Twitter, it was kind of discussed, those unfortunate, but how are we always the ones to do that? And, my argument to that to be, well, if your offense is good, you're going to counteract those chances and you're going to generate better chances and score on those chances. So you can, afford to give up some of those goals. And that's like really what you want to force teams into decisions like that, where they need a goal like that to really beat you. It's just kind of unfortunate that it happens. It was really kind of, I'd say, about a 5-minute stretch in the second half where the team really lost the game. Down 1-0. They came in, they looked a little loose, I would say, defensively. And, really, Lewis Morgan, the quality that the Red Bulls have, they really got out in a running match. And I thought in the first half, DC's defense did a really good job kind of keeping the Red Bulls in front of them, not allowing them to really, get into, a track meet. This team is much more direct. They're certainly, both DC and the Red Bulls are direct teams, but Red Bulls are very much more a direct team. And, you get into a running match with the Red Bulls, you're going to lose games. And that's kind of what happened in the second half. They got a couple counterattacks. They got a couple goals. They're up 3-0. Really kind of buried the game from there. They really just kind of sat back. DC did come out. I think they, got close to, 3 XG on the day, and they certainly generated chances. Christian Benteke had a nice little half-turn shot that, was a great save. Of course, Lucas Bartlett comes off the, I believe, off the set piece in the corner to sort of maybe give some life back to this team. And I think even Jacob Murrell still had an opportunity as well. But, overall, it wasn't enough. And I think, to Troy Saint's credit in the post game, he kind of mentioned, he was like, yeah, I mean, we got some chances, but they were off set pieces and, we need to be better. And so overall, it wasn't a great performance from this team. And, that kind of set up me not feeling so good about the next match, which was against Inter Miami. This was a game, I think I was most worried about Lionel Messi. And I think that's an absolutely a good reason to be worried about Lionel Messi. He is an excellent player. He is the MVP this year. I will admit it. Do I think that maybe there's a opportunity that a Christian Benteke can get some votes? Sure. But I mean, it's Lionel Messi. He makes, such a difference out there on the, for this Miami team. So he was, of course, out on Wednesday, and I was kind of like, oh boy, if he's not there, then maybe we've got a chance. But if he is there, then oh boy, this might be a long night for DC. And he still had an impact, and we'll get into that a little bit. I thought DC did a pretty good job of not making him an impact, but he again still finds a way to get an impact. And I think the most important thing DC did, they played probably a more defensive style. I think that'll lead to maybe some people talking about the attack. DC really weren't allowed to really impose their style, and they really couldn't impose their style, because if they allowed Miami to catch them on breaks or to get breaks, this game was going to be very long. They had to play a very smart, slow, kind of pragmatic style of game. And I think we saw it. We didn't see Santos or Herrera, for that matter, really fly up top when DC got the ball or they got counterattacks. It was very much, the three attackers. It was Benteke, it was Cuti Pietro, and Jared Stroud. And those were kind of the only guys that really were able to get forward in a lot of instances in this game. So it really wasn't a game where they really were trying to attack. But to their credit, they did a very effective job of really nullifying a lot of what Miami was trying to do in this game. Lionel Messi, for instance, had 0.12 expected goals I think off like one shot, and 0.06 expected assists. That's according to FootMob at the end of the game. I don't know if those stats will change. He got some moments where he got some dribbles, but really Christopher McVey, I thought, was the standout on the defensive side of the ball. He was everywhere he needed to be to just keep Miami sort of off the score sheet, to keep them from generating really big chances. There was really only one chance I can recall really in the first half, and I'm not sure who got it from Miami, but it was, kind of a ball where they had some open space. Great save from Bono to kind of keep it 0-0 at the half. DC also, again, had their fair share of chances. I believe, Christian Benteke had at least a chance. Then they had some moments where, maybe they could have put this game away, or maybe they could have, gotten a goal. And then maybe you're looking at, yes, you give up a goal and a 1-1 draw, but, you really can't do it. I thought also offensively, Jared Stroud was really good. There were some people on Twitter who maybe weren't so happy with his performance. Look, Jared Stroud, if Jared Stroud was able to do some of the things I think people want him to do 100% of the time, he would not be here in MLS. And I think that's just something you've got to recognize. He is a very effective player, and I think he's been a very good player for this team this year. I think he's done a lot of great things, and I don't see anyone else on this roster that you bench him for. I think you definitely look to try to see if there's somewhere you can improve. Some international player to come and maybe provide some competition. And then he becomes, a rotational player, a guy who can come in and actually, change a game, with his depth. I'm sure he won't like that, but hey, I think some competition would maybe be good in his position. He certainly does a lot of things well. He's also got some limitations, but his moves, his runs, everything about him, there's several plays I saw him, really just looking around, trying to find the right space and really kind of causing Inter Miami some fits. But again, I think the limitation on the attacking end. I also want to highlight Ted Kudipietro. He is still maybe kind of getting there a little bit offensively, but I think a big reason why he is out there on the field instead of Jacob Murrell. Murrell's getting a lot of buzz now, and I understand that. I am not ready to give up on Ted Kudipietro just yet. I think Ted Kudipietro has a chance to get back into the score sheet. I think he has a chance to put together his offensive performances. His defensive work rate against Miami really helped sort of swallow up Lionel Messi. There were two moments in this game, I believe, both in each half, where Messi got the ball at the top of the box and he tracked back, won the ball cleanly from Lionel Messi, dispossessed him, and moved it forward. They genuinely made this game extremely miserable for Lionel Messi. And they really played, I think, probably, one of their better games this year. And just, they got some chances. Jared Stroud, of course, I think had the bigger miss of the I think off the post, but they really did play an effective style of game. And the subs were coming in, and they threw in Garrison Tubbs. They threw in very much defensive minded about 80 something minute. I think they were kind of like, hey, let's just kind of let's lock the scheme down. We're not really getting out of here with a point. I think would be 4 points and 2 road matches and a home game is not a bad showing. Fortunately, we saw the concussion sub maybe play a little bit of a factor here. That sub is supposed to help teams and help teams in certain situations, but in this case, it very much did not favor DC. Martin Rodriguez, of course, came on. Again, I don't think he put it in. I think he was out there for like 5 minutes, gets a ball directly to the face. And then they sub in Gabriel Pirani. They give the concussion sub that then also allows Inter Miami to make a sub, and they sub in Cabana. And guess what happens? Probably 2 minutes in, pretty much as soon as Gabriel Pirani steps on the field, Inter Miami has the ball. Sergio Busquets is right out there. Sergio Busquets probably had the best game as far as like just his distribution and passing. But again, DC did a very effective job at reading that, pressing, generally making him miserable as well. Except for one moment, and that's the moment that kills you. Gabriel Pirani very clearly doesn't step. You can see Christian Benteke motioning to Pirani to step. He very clearly is saying, hey, go step. There's also some good video of Lionel Messi realizing that what Busquets was about ready to do and sort of motioning to Campana to make the run. So again, showing the impact that Lionel Messi has, just more than just more than just being a guy who can do some amazing things on the field, but just his intelligence is second to none in that moment. And Busquets doesn't have any pressure, plays the ball over the top, finds Campana. Defense maybe could do a better job of tracking, but I'm not, I think there's also the argument DC could nullify that play, and Campana gets the ball, gets a clean shot on goal, takes a nice shot, hits the bottom of the post and goes into the back of the net. And that was really all she wrote. DC did 95 minutes of exceptional, great work to get out of, pretty much get out of there with a point. And they come away with their second loss in 3 games. And it's certainly, I think a lot of us are kind of struggling. We know this is a rebuilding year, but this one kind of stings and this one kind of hurts. And you can kind of see it from Christian Benteke, just kind of what it meant, I think, to him and how upset he was. So again, unfortunate loss. I think it's important to recognize, I think these games have sort of shown, that DC has come a long way. I think both games against Atlanta and Miami in particular showcase, how much this team has really improved, how organized they look, how committed they are. And really, I think a lot of credit goes to Troy Lesesne. He is, whether it's him or his coaching staff, he gives a lot of credit to Zach Prince a lot of the time. Whether it's him or his coaching staff, almost every single game this team has showed up, they have a way they want to play, and they've either frustrated the opponent or they, figure out ways to generate chances and to be good. And yes, there's still some limitations and sloppy moments. I mean, this is a team that is very much has a lot of dead cap weight, a lot of players that are, hopefully not going to be here next year, and hopefully they can make some moves maybe this summer to try to see if they can bring something in. It's not an ideal situation, I think, for Troy Lesesne to walk into, but I think he's done an excellent job at sort of maintaining, getting this team to sort of raise the floor, maximize Christian Benteke. And I think we got the stretch coming up. This is going to be a stretch of games to watch. They will have Chicago at home, who are god awful. Like this should be the game that maybe gets. This should be the sort of, they put the death nail in the Chicago Fire this year. They have been awful, to say the least. At home, away, it doesn't seem to matter. They are definitely the wooden spoon contenders this year. Then they've got a road game against Montreal. That was a 1-0 game. DC were the better side, but Montreal are a team that I think is, they've got a lot of sort of turmoil. Their chief soccer officer, or chief, whoever the GM was fired. There's clearly a lot of turmoil sort of above that. And they just got completely spanked. I believe 5-1 or some audacious number by Toronto. And then of course, they've got returning home. They've got Toronto, and Toronto is still a team that's improving. They've got a lot of talent. They're starting to put it together. It won't be an easy match, but I still think it's a match that DC can come out and still give them fits, give them headaches, and ultimately come out with a win. I think this is a performance that I think will dictate whether this is a team that is right where they should be, ninth to the 11th, maybe fighting for that sort of last playoff spot, which, by the way, speaking of all of this, they are in that 9th playoff spot. Or if this is a team that maybe has a little bit, can sort of beat the teams below them and maybe rise above that a little bit. So I don't think 9 points is out of the question here. I am being 100% truthful there. I think they definitely can get a win against Chicago. I think they can easily go into Montreal tired, demoralized, another team that has a lot of bad sort of cap space, but, also a good coach. I think they're another team that can kind of, really, put them to the wood chipper and walk away with back-to-back wins. And then, of course, then you come home and you got to win your home games. And I think Toronto's is still a very flawed team that they can exploit and go get wins. And I think they also will be without Sean Johnson, who I believe is still their keeper. I think he has been called up for some of those camps. So maybe he'll be gone by that point. I'm not sure when those games begin, but certainly something to watch. So yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting week coming up for this team. Let's go ahead and we got a couple listener questions. We'll sit with Twitter. Brett Hines says, what is Pirani's contract situation? Is there a realistic chance they can offload him before next season? I would trade Yaz, Rodriguez, and Pirani for one decent winger or left back at this point. Yeah, man. I think you're going to see Pirani get a little bit of leash. He is on that U22 slot. He doesn't take up a lot of cap room. they still have 2 other U22 slots they can technically utilize here. I think Pirani is, I don't want to say Pirani's on his last rope. It seems very clearly that, he has to earn a spot back. And I'm sure the moment that just happened where, the team's done everything well, I'm sure that's going to go up on a big bulletin board. Whatever meeting with Gabriel Pirani is coming up being like, hey man, you needed to step there. That was a moment you needed to step and you didn't. And that's, why we're out of here not walking away with a point. So I think that moment in particular was one that will kind of go up on the bulletin board. He again still struggles. He's maybe a little bit better in the creation department, but he was really bad last time. I don't know what the situation here will be with him. I'm sure you could, I think he's maybe the one sort of bad signing so far of the team. And, maybe the team was right in maybe walking away from it and should have walked away from it. So I don't know. I'm not ready to throw in the towel on Pirani just yet. I think he's still a young guy. Maybe he'll develop, gets more comfortable. Maybe we'll see something from him. But yeah, I think this definitely Rodriguez and Yaz need to be out here. I want to get to another question. This is the Enclave says, dumb question. I'm sorry. Look, there are not dumb questions here. But in your opinion, could a Rodriguez-Benteke Mural trio on the field potentially give DC more attacking options than just passing Benteke headers and hoping for the best? Interesting question. I still think a Teku DiPietro Benteke Mural trio with Teku DiPietro kind of being more in a midfield role, maybe more like central role, could be something that could work. I'm not going to say it's going to be like Teku DiPietro is like the next great number 10, but I think he does possess a lot of good midfield techniques. I talked about when he went back and sort of won the ball from Lionel Messi, that track back, that ability, that comfortability, that being comfortable in the midfield. I want to see more reps from him. I think this is going to be, if he can stay healthy through this stretch, I think this could be a big confidence booster for him. A lot of teams here. This team has had a pretty tough schedule. Let's not mince words here. I know Atlanta's been bad, but this hasn't been an easy schedule, and DC has navigated it, I think, pretty effectively. Coming up this month, I think is a much more softer schedule, and maybe an opportunity to get some momentum, get some confidence, and then maybe heading into the Leagues Cup break and some of the other breaks coming up, maybe they can be a much better team. So I'm not ready to, I don't think Rodriguez really has much of a future. I will not be surprised if the team releases him from his contract and he's back at Colo Colo in Chile. I think is where he typically plays. So I will not be surprised if he ends up back there. I think he's hinted at very, very much that he wants to go back. And I think of the players, he takes up the most cap space. So I think we'll see that. I think we'll see that happen. And then, all right, let's give some. Here's some other. Okay, that's USL. We'll hold off there. This is Loud Adam who is, I believe, from one of the Adams on Next in Line. So it's probably playing off previously, but Ateke were hit by a bus. Who could actually score goals on DC? This has been a question we've talked about a lot on our show, and I think we've talked about it extensively. Who can be the secondary goal scorer? Benteke sitting up there with 11 goals, and everybody else is on one goal who has a goal. So who's going to join that second goal club? I understand. I understand. Maybe I feel like a lot of us look at this team and we say, wow, we're playing really well, but we're doing things right, but wow, we just have Benteke who can really score goals. Like, we need to find somebody else who can score goals. I would much rather see this team, turn the ball over. I think more to the Enclave's point, I don't really want to turn the ball over to Rodriguez because, that's not going to do us any good in the future. The future is, Jacob Murrell, Teku DiPietro, Jackson Hopkins, Garrison Tubbs, Christian Fletcher. Those are the guys I want to see get minutes down. Even if it means that maybe we miss the playoffs. If we miss the playoffs and those guys get a majority of the minutes as opposed to like a Martin Rodriguez or even a Mohamed Diaz. I consider that a more successful season than if we squeak in at 8th or ninth place, but it's being taken up by guys who aren't going to be here next year. So that's my opinion. I think this is kind of what I wanted to see. I've been very impressed that guys like Jackson Hopkins are getting minutes. I really didn't bring him up, but I think he's had a couple good games where I think, hey, he's starting to settle into that central midfield. The reps that he's getting in there, I think, are kind of helping his game. I still don't know like what type of role he serves. Is he a 6? Is he an 8? Can he push forward? But I think just sort of being a guy who can sort of progress the ball through the midfield and sort of be a ball progressor right now, and feed it to the wing or feed it to a Benteke or playoff Benteke, I think is serving him kind of well. And I think he's going to get one of those bangers that's going to go in the back of the net. I also think Petzl has really kind of stepped up. He didn't get the start last week. I think he was kind of used as more defensive cover. But when he came in, I thought he was still good. So, those are the guys I want to see be getting minutes. I want guys that we are, trying to get here next year. And then, we can assess at the end of the season, okay, do we think Jackson Hopkins can make that next step, or do we want to look for cover there? Do we think Christian Fletcher can come in? Do we think is Ted Kudu-Pietro the answer, or do we need to go get a guy? Obviously we lean towards yes, but it's something we need to find out. So I'm much more happy with this team figuring out who they are. I'm not really concerned. I want this team to make the playoffs. I think they can make the playoffs, but I'm not really all that concerned if they do or don't this year, because this is about laying the framework, laying the groundwork, for the next season. So, all right, let's shift gears. I think we talked enough DC. Thank you guys again so much for the questions. You help, make this really good. Let's talk Spirit. And we'll talk Spirit, and we'll talk some other women's soccer related items. So the Washington Spirit played against Angel City FC. After the long road trip, they were back home. The game started really well. Trinity Rodman with a very, very nicely taken goal. It looked like the Spirit were kind of off to the races. And then there was about like a 3, 4, 5 minute stretch in the in the first half where the things maybe we worried things were going to fall apart. I watched kind of like the first 30 minutes because the DC game was delayed. And I was kind of like, oh boy, Boutel with an own goal, cross comes in. She kind of misclears it, mishits it, deflects off her, goes into the back of the net. Not a good look from her. And then LaRue off a set piece, heads the ball in. DC are down, find themselves, from being up 2-1 off the Rodman goal to being down 2-1. And we thought, oh geez, is this going to be a long game, or is this going to be one of those games that kind of gets away? They did, of course, have a sub, I believe Spencer, Jasmine Spencer off the defense for Angel City, went off on the game, and the commentators are kind of talking about that making an impact. And I think ultimately it kind of did for this team. So the Spirit, to their credit, fought back in the first half and kind of buried the game from that point. It was a wild sequence. There was a long ball over the top. I think Bethune will get the assist, but I'm not sure she really intended to do that. She kind of gets the ball, plays kind of a half turn, and then finds Trinity Rodman for the goal to kind of tie it back up. So immediately, pulls the Spirit back into the game. And then there's a play in the box, kind of a lot of passing. The Spirit, I think, almost scored off a chance. It was a nice clear off the line. The ball then kind of falls to Casey Kruger, who then who gets a low shot down the box, and they're up 3-2. And I think at that point, Angel City went from up 2-1 down 3-2. So they started to push the game a little bit, and they tried to see if they could catch the Spirit, and then the Spirit absolutely punished them. And, I think we see again the development of Croy Bethune, just a long ball over top. She picks up the ball, she dribbles. Everyone on that team on Angel City just kind of looks scared of her. No one really steps to her. Everybody's trying to backpedal. And then it's like 3 or 4 players kind of, she kind of draws a bunch of players around here that nobody marks Sarr, who is wide open. A nice little chip ball over to Sarr. Sarr finishes it, and it's 4-2, and the Spirit are off to the races. In the second half, they kind of just put it a little bit in cruise control. They had a few moments. Hatch, of course, had a moment, and then I believe Bethune really had some excellent runs, and I think almost had another moment as well. But overall, it was that second half, the Spirit were kind of in control of this game, and it was a good win. And again, I think we're seeing this team really be ahead of schedule from where we thought they would be. We thought this would be like a long, we're just going to be bad. This team does not look bad. They look borderline elite in NWSL. They're second place right now. They're not perfect, and I think we saw flashes of the not perfect. I think they let Angel City kind of grab the game a little bit, but I think they have the talent in the attack to kind of wrestle it back, and I think we saw that today. Trinity Rodman's an excellent player. She had probably one of her best games of the year, just all over on that right side, and really punished Angel City a lot in this game. And then of course we got Corey Bethune, who looks like it looks like a rookie of the year, might even slip into like the Olympic spot. She's been that good. Part of me doesn't want her to go to the Olympics. Part of me wants her to stay here. But, I also know she probably is thinking about, making that Olympic roster. So we'll see. But she's been just excellent. Also, Sarr, I want to call out Sarr because she's been a player that I think a lot of us, a lot of fans were, kind of like, why are you playing her? She doesn't look good. It doesn't look comfortable. I think as this system has developed, she started to look really, really good. I think it's been a process with her. But, I think she's gone from, why is she on the field to, she's actually probably one of the better attackers in the league right now. Let me just bring some stats here. This is Jason Anderson pulled this stat. This came from FB Ref. 10 entire teams in the NWSL have put together fewer goal conceding chances than Bethune, Rodman, and Sarr's 25. Corey Bethune has 13 goal creating actions. Trinity Rodman has 7, and Sarr has 5. This is a team that has built an elite attack, and right now I think it's just a matter of figuring out, maybe getting a little bit more depth defensively. We actually do have a Spirit related question. Comes from Lotus over on our Discord. Right now, the Spirit, they've allowed a healthy amount of goals this season. Have you noticed particular defensive issues they should work on, other than, say, limiting concussions, concessions, and adding more center back options? Both are those issues that have been widely discussed. I think really it is, I think some competition at center back would help. I don't think Boutel or Mickione have been bad. I think they've been okay. They've been pretty good. But I just think you don't, this is a league that is very, very, every game you're going up against like an elite attacker. Like there's not a team that doesn't have an elite attacker or some player out there that's really, really good. And it's always going to be a challenge in this league to prevent that. But I do look at some some pretty key mistakes. Patel's own goal, for instance, that's a missed clearance. That has to be cleared if she wants to be, a starter. I think it's just a matter of getting some competition. They really don't have a whole lot of competition at center back right now. It's really just Boutel and Mickione. They almost have to get creative if any one of them gets injured. So I think we've been hearing a lot of rumblings, a lot of smoke about certain players from Barcelona that are defenders and certain players from Spain. So I think there's a pretty good chance we see, at least one of those come to fruition and one of those come over here. We'll see. The European season is wrapping up. We obviously saw Chelsea win the Women's Super League. So the European season is fast coming to a close, and we're going to get the full-time head coach back. And it's, and then I think you're going to start to see a lot of moves happen this summer. I think you might also see some trades. I think the Spirit might be pretty active. I don't want to say anything. I don't want to jinx it, but I kind of look at Ashley Hatch right now and I'm like, Sarr's really showing up as that center forward option. You have some potential to go out and get an international slot. I know fans might not like it, and I know I am tempting the fan base here, but I could see a potential trade happen for a player like Ashley Hatch. I don't want it to happen because I love Ashley Hatch, but looking at how good Sarr is being, looking at the fact that Lacey Santos is coming in to sort of play that wing position that she plays, She certainly has some trade value, and I could very much see Mark Krikorian look and say, hey, we've got some surplus here. Let's, make a move here, and then we can sort of bolster our back line. Again, pure speculation. I have no news on anything right now. Let's also talk about the Super League team coming up. So, DC Power FC is the new DC Super League team. I don't know on the show if we will cover this team. I'm just being honest with you there. I think we might try. I'll probably watch some games. I might give a little bit, but we are literally three people, and we all have lives. I am the only childless person on the podcast. The other two, of course, John just had a kid, and Brian Kane, our producer, has a couple. So they are very busy people who I don't know how they find the time. John also travels a lot too, so I don't know how he manages that. But basically, I don't know if we'll really cover this team, but I think it's worth discussing, broadly. What does this team mean? Stephen Goff having the report. I believe there's like a real estate investor involved, and then of course I think the DC, of course, DC United are of course involved in the colors are black and red. You're seeing a lot of the a lot of the influence from DC. They will apparently play at Audi Field. By the way, with regards to the field, I think a lot has been brought up about the fact that the DC Defenders, you have DC United, you have the Spirit, and now you have this new team coming in. What is the field going to look like? Stephen Goff dropping a hint that essentially the team is looking at a hybrid field. Go Google it if you not say it's actually pretty cool. It's like they lay down, artificial fibers, and then the grass kind of grows with it. The roots sort of grow around the harder fibers, and it, apparently it makes the field a little bit more durable. So something to watch as the team, moves forward with probably replacing the field. The Commanders have one more game coming up in late June, and then they are done. I thought the field looked a little bit better in the Spirit game than it did in the last DC game. So I'm hopeful by next week. There is no Defenders game. The field has a full week, I think, to rest. Let me check to make sure that is correct, because I'm not sure where the Spirit play next week. Oh, they have a home match on Friday. So 5 days. It'll have 6 days to actually fully rest. So hopefully that gets there. But sorry, I rambled. I moved on for another topic. But regarding DC Power FC, this is also from Loud Adam M. Said, also forgive me if you already went over this, but how is DC going to manage to have two women's clubs in separate leagues playing Audi Field with Barani and / Anton's group has pulled out of the U.S. having pulled out of the U.S. Super League franchise, and said the team will reportedly play a few matches at Audi. I think I talked about it here. I think the team is talking about a new surface. I think they are talking about doing something like that. The USL Super League, I think, is a topic of conversation. I think overall in the women's game, I think there is an argument to be made that there are markets out there that are not being served by NWSL. NWSL wants to fully vet their owners. They don't want to get into situations like they had previously with teams that really, couldn't afford to really be professional. So they want to be careful. This is a boon time, but they want to be, strategic in how they do it. I think there's certainly an avenue. You can argue there are more markets that could potentially support USL Super League franchises. Of course, you have Dallas is one market that I think definitely needs a team. I think Cincinnati's been talked about. Tampa Bay, I think, is part of the Super League as well. So there's a lot of franchises here. DC's the weird one, because what happened sort of, and if you recall a little bit of the history, is DC were looking to do a W League team and finance that, and they were going to play it out. They were going to play, it was going to be sort of a college type situation. And then essentially, then they said, oh no, now we're going for a Super League team. This was kind of all during the sort of the turmoil amongst the Spirit and their situation with their ownership. That situation is completely resolved. I don't think the Spirit really care. They are more than willing to pay for the rights to use Audi Field to play all their matches there. I think DC's not going to behoove them to get the income. This will be a sort of different league. It'll be sort of a fall to spring league. It's sort of designed to align with the winter calendar. I think this is a league that I think there are a couple things happening here. First of all, I think I think they went into this, wanting to just be a D2 league, the USL that is. And then I think eventually they looked at it and said, well, we're not really generating the interest. So, we have a lot of people saying, well, we want to be D1. We'll join your league if you go after D1. So I think they said, okay, let's go D1. I don't think there's any, maybe they say maybe in a couple of years they can build something. Maybe this calendar shift will change the way soccer is done in this country. I have always been somebody who's not really against the whole, fall to spring. I think it could work. I think it could put the games that matter in better weather. And everybody talks about the games that are like middle of the season would be in bad weather. And my argument to that is always, well, those are games not many people want to go to anyway. So what's the difference? Put your good games in better weather. But I don't know. I think I think this USL Super League is looking to go after D1, generate interest, get markets in. If it doesn't come to fruition, well, then they can just fall back to D2. And maybe they lose a few markets, but I think maybe they gain some markets as well. I've also seen some people on Discord speculating with the DC team that maybe this is a team once the Baltimore stadium gets built, maybe they can say, hey, we're just going to move this team to Baltimore. So I don't know. Interesting thought process there right now. So again, it's going to be interesting to watch how the USL Super League forms, how it builds. I'm not sure if it will be what it's going to be. I'm not sure if, is the NWSL really that strong? I think we'll know early on if this team can grab players that are maybe, not on NWSL rosters. I think you'll see a lot of players that are maybe, cut from NWSL teams that'll find their way on these rosters to sort of supplement the players. And then it's going to be who can they maybe grab internationally. I think they've positioned this league during the international window to try to lure international players, to these teams and to say, hey, we're going to play on the international calendar. We're not going to play during the heat of summer, come over to our league. So it's going to be fascinating to watch. This is sort of new territory with women's soccer. Pro soccer has always been a struggle, and now it's like it's a boon time. And the question is, will it be a big enough boon? So, all right, folks, I think that's going to do it. This has been a single show. I guess I did about 40 minutes, so I did a normal show. So I hope you guys listened. If you did, I thank you so much. If you didn't and said you hate this, well, sorry. It was either this or no content. So we're trying to get the content out to you guys. So again, patreon.com/RFK Refugees. Join up. I'm going to try to I know I missed out on doing my preview for Miami. I'm definitely going to try to do that. The 3-game stints are going to be a little hard for me. So it's a lot of writing I got to do, and I'm not a natural writer. So, but again, you like the content, you like the show, let us know more what you guys want to see out of it. We definitely want to give you guys value out of that Patreon page. So again, thank you guys so much for listening. We'll catch you guys next week. Vamos.